the most common words you hear now in coverage of things is narrative. Narrative is storytelling. People want storytellers. I hear this all the time in talk radio. We do a lot of research on the show. We do a lot of research. My company for my evening show does a ton of research. And the thing here is we want storytellers. We want people who can tell a story. Everybody wants a bedtime story. Well, what you hear in the media and the like is narrative. We need a narrative. And what the press does is they leave out facts that might change the story. The media comes into this, politicians come into it, and they want to tell a story. They want to tell a story that has villains and good guys, protagonists and antagonists, who, what, where, when, why, and how. Why and how are the big ones now. How did the antagonist do such a nasty thing? Why did the antagonist do it? How did the protagonist overcome? And occasionally in telling the story, they run into nasty little facts that get in the way of their story. And the way they deal with those facts is to ignore them. And along comes, let's say, Fox News and says, well, actually, let's talk about the facts they left out of the story. How dare you do that, undermining my narrative? And it's my truth now. Who cares what the truth is? It's my truth. People want to hide behind my truth to avoid the fact that they're full of crap. They want to avoid the actual fact. Let's look at Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, whose state has outperformed New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all those New England Democrat states. You would never know it. You would think he was a mass murderer in the media. They have willfully ignored facts. That Rebecca Jones woman showed up, the data analyst who got fired, claimed to be some sort of Dr. Fauci of Florida. The media heralded her as some sort of hero. Turns out she's kind of nuts. She's being charged with a felony. She's got a history of issues. She's not a credible source, but the media needed someone, so they left out all of the facts that could cause doubt about her veracity to make her sound truthful. You would never know all of the details, the arrest, the charges, anything like that, because the media needs her in the narrative to be the protagonist so they can make DeSantis the bad guy. But he's not. In fact, if there's a bad guy in the story, it's her, which you wouldn't know from the media. And now, of course, people in the media have to walk her back. And again, Jake Tapper, one of the very few people in the media, particularly at CNN, where they've just built this woman into some sort of martyr. And he's one of the very few people to point out to people she's actually a terrible person with a history of not quite telling the truth. And people in the media should stop building her up. And she attacked him. And other people in the press attacked him for pointing that out. It's all about the narrative storytelling. But here's a point. This is really important. Republicans still win. Republicans still win. The media has spent how many months telling us that those summer protests and riots weren't riots, that they were peaceful, that nothing violent happened, that no one was injured? And yet the American public saw right through that. The American public actually rejected all of the Democrats who supported defund the police. Why? Because we are less and less dependent on the national American media. So I have a Substack newsletter. You can subscribe to it. You should subscribe to it. It's a great way to actually support the growth of this program. $7 a month, $70 a year. If you text DATA to 33777, you can get a lot of it for free. Some stuff you got to pay for. And the media is coming for Substack. The media, there's a journalism professor from Los Angeles, UCLA, saying essentially Substack needs to be censored, monitored, and regulated because it's going to hurt the newsrooms of America. We're very much back. If you'll recall, in 2004, it was the Powerline blog brought down Dan Rather. The Powerline blog was able to show that the letter Dan Rather had that purported to be a letter from George W. Bush's commander in the National Guard saying that Bush was skipping assignments or whatnot. I forget all the details, but that it was an authentic letter. And Powerline blog was able to show that it was an impossibility for that letter to be real. And the reason it was is because based on the date it was written, there was not computers didn't exist. It had to have been written on a typewriter, and there was not a typewriter in the world that could reproduce the font in that letter. The only way to reproduce that font was in Microsoft Word, where it was an in-house font. No typewriter could have shaped the letters on the page in that way. And it brought down Dan Rather and his producer, Mary Mape or whatever her name was, and it ruined Rather's career and exposed the media. And you had voices at the New York Times say, well, bloggers don't have editors. We have editors. Who gave you Jason Blair and all the fabulists within the New York Times and the like. The media doesn't like the competition, and they are livid that conservatives can bypass them to get their message out. And yet we still do it quite successfully. We still win elections, which is why cancel culture has picked up steam to try to stamp out those alternative voices, including my own, so that you're required to listen to MSNBC and read the New York Times. And they're not going to be successful.